You already know the number before you look. That's the part nobody talks about. Your thumb hovers over the banking app for half a second longer than it should, like your body is running a quick cost-benefit analysis before it lets you see the thing. And when the screen finally loads, there it is. Zero. Not zero like you rounded down. Not zero like you forgot about a few hundred sitting in some other account. Zero like the final line of math that doesn't move. You are 35 years old. You have a job. You have a phone in your hand. You have a streaming subscription you keep forgetting to cancel. And you have nothing saved. Here's what I want you to know in the next 12 minutes, because it's the opposite of what that number is whispering to you right now. You are not broken. You are not a cautionary tale. And you are nowhere near as alone in this as the silence is making you feel. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, and especially about the quiet, heavy moments like this one, the ones people carry alone at 2 in the morning and never say out loud. So let's walk through this one together, level by level, from the zero to the first real step out of it. And if this finds you at the right time, a like genuinely helps it reach someone else who needs to hear it too. Alright, let's start where you actually are. Level 1. The number. You close the app. You put the phone face down on the table, screen to the wood, like turning it over might turn off what you just saw. And then you do the thing almost everyone at 35 with nothing saved does. You don't tell anyone. Not your partner, not your closest friend, not the person you share everything else with. Because this specific number, this particular kind of empty, doesn't feel like a problem you're working on. It feels like a verdict. Like something has already been decided about you. Like if you said it out loud, it would become permanent in a way it isn't yet. So you don't say it. You pour a glass of water. You watch something on your phone until your eyes get heavy. You tell yourself you'll start a plan tomorrow. And here's the truth about how you got here, because it matters that you hear this part correctly. It was never one decision. It was never one big reckless mistake you could point to. It was 1,000 small ones, and almost every single one of them was completely reasonable at the time. The year the car needed work and the little bit of savings you had went with it, the stretch when work got slow and you paused the savings plan and then just never quite unpaused it, the relationship that ended and quietly reorganized your entire financial life, the loans that ate the margin before there ever was a margin, the city that cost more than it should, the raises that came slower than the bills did, and a decade that moved faster than you ever thought a decade could. You didn't blow it, you just never really got started. And now it's 35 and the number is 0 and the silence around it is louder than you expected. But that silence is lying to you. Let me show you why. Level 2. The wake up. There's always a moment. Everyone who's ever stood where you're standing has one. Some specific, ordinary, unremarkable moment that cracks something open. Maybe it was a bill you weren't ready for. The kind that shows up in a stack of mail you'd been avoiding. A number with too many digits that you assumed something else would cover and didn't. And you go to move it to the bottom of the pile like you always do, and this time something in you just stops. Because you don't have a plan for this. There's no account to pull from, no cushion to catch it. There's just that number, and beneath it, another number. The date it's due, and the whole weight of what 0 actually means sitting in the space between the two. Or maybe it was gentler than that, and somehow worse. A text from an old friend. Just closed on the house. A photo of the porch, a kid in the yard. And you sat with the phone longer than you meant to, because underneath how genuinely happy you were for them was a small question you couldn't quite silence. Not why them, just why not me yet? Or maybe it was the most ordinary thing of all. Someone asked you, casually, the way people do at 35, what your retirement plan looked like, and you gave an answer. The one that uses the right words in roughly the right order and sounds like a plan. And they nodded, and the conversation moved on. But that night, lying in the dark, you replayed what you'd actually said, and you realized it wasn't a plan at all. It was a placeholder for a plan. It was hope, wearing the costume of a strategy. And that's the moment it shifts. Not into panic, into clarity, because the question was never, how did I get here? The question, the only one that actually matters now, is what happens if I stay here? Level 3, the relief. And this is the part I most need you to hear, so stay with me. You are not the exception. You are not uniquely broken. You are so far from alone in this that the real numbers, if you let them land, might actually set you free. Because the truth is that a huge share of people your age are carrying some version of the exact same thing. Depending on how you count it, something like a quarter of working age adults have essentially nothing set aside for the future. The typical person in your age bracket has far, far less saved than the polished benchmarks say they should. This isn't a handful of people who messed up. This is a national condition quietly affecting millions of people who all think, just like you do right now, that they're the only one. Move across countries and the picture barely changes. Enormous percentages of people living paycheck to paycheck. Whole age brackets that are nowhere near where the guidelines say they ought to be. I'm not telling you this to make you comfortable with it. I'm telling you this to pull you out of the shame spiral long enough to actually think clearly. Because here's the mechanism nobody explains. The shame is the thing that keeps the number at 0. The shame is what makes you close the app and turn the phone face down. The shame is what turns a completely solvable problem into what feels like a permanent sentence. So hear the difference, because it's everything. You are not uniquely broken. You are commonly stuck. And those are two entirely different things. One of them feels like a life sentence. The other one has a way out. You're in the second one. Level 4, the honest math. Now, I'm going to be straight with you because you deserve honesty more than you deserve comfort right now. There is one thing in money that you genuinely cannot get back, and it's time. You can earn more, you can spend less, you can switch jobs, negotiate, start a side income, get a lucky break. But the specific years that already passed, those are gone, and it's worth naming that honestly instead of pretending otherwise. Because the earlier a dollar goes to work, the more time it has to grow, and the years in your 20s would have had the most time of all. A dollar invested young quietly becomes many dollars later. Not by magic, just by having decades to compound. Starting later means each dollar has fewer of those years. That's the real cost of the wait, and I won't insult you by pretending it's nothing. But here's the part that actually matters, the part the shame doesn't want you to notice. Naming that cost is not the same as being defeated by it. There's a strange kind of grief in starting late. You end up quietly mourning a version of your life that didn't happen. The one where younger you was disciplined and clear-headed and already years ahead. And every time you sit down to finally start, you brush up against that grief, and it makes the whole thing feel heavier than it should. It makes starting feel like an admission that those years are gone. They are gone. And the sooner you let that be true without it crushing you, the sooner you can do the one thing that actually changes anything from here. Start. Because the math that's left still works. It just needs you to stop arguing with the part that's already behind you. Level 5. The turn. And here's the thing almost nobody tells you about starting at 35 with nothing. You have something a 25-year-old does not have. You have a reason, not a vague one. Not someday I'd like to be comfortable. A real one, with weight, the kind you can feel in your chest. The bill you couldn't cover, the text from your friend, the 2 a.m. silence with the phone face down. Those weren't just the things that woke you up, they're fuel. And fuel, pointed at the right mechanics, changes everything. So let me show you what those mechanics actually are, because this is where it stops being a feeling and becomes a set of small, doable moves. The first move is not some clever investment. The first move is a buffer. A small starter cushion of cash sitting in a separate savings account you don't touch, not because a small buffer will rescue you in a real crisis, it won't, but because having no buffer at all is exactly what turns a minor problem into a catastrophic one, and catastrophes are what keep savings at 0. So you plug that leak first. The second move is automation, and this one is the quiet secret of almost everyone who ever builds anything. Not a plan, not willpower. Automation. The money moves on its own before you ever see it, before the spending decisions even happen. Because you are never going to out-willpower the way your brain handles money at the end of a long, tired day. So you take yourself out of the equation. You set it up once. So that showing up doesn't depend on how motivated you feel that month. And then, if there's any kind of match available to you through work, a place where money you contribute gets matched with more money, you start there. Because that's about the closest thing to free money that exists. None of this is complicated. That's the thing you have to sit with. The steps were never the hard part. The hard part was the silence, the shame, the app you kept closing. And you just walked straight through that. You're still here. Level 6. The plan. Let's make it real because vague intentions don't move numbers, and I don't want to leave you with a feeling instead of a path. The honest version is this. From a standing start at 35 with steady, automated contributions and a normal income, you can still build a genuinely meaningful nest egg by the time you reach retirement age. Not the fantasy number you'd have had if you'd started at 22, but a real, solid, changes your whole later life number built entirely from here. And you don't have to do it all yourself either. In most places, there's some kind of baseline support waiting at the other end, a floor you build on top of rather than everything resting on your shoulders alone. Your job isn't to catch up to some imaginary person who started early. Your job is to build above that floor consistently for the years you do have. And here's the honest caveat: because a plan that ignores real life isn't a plan. These numbers only work if you stay consistent, and life will absolutely test that. There will be years the contribution has to shrink. There will be expenses that eat the margin. There will be a 40-year-old version of you who's tired and a 45-year-old version who feels overwhelmed. So understand what the plan actually is. The plan is not the numbers. The plan is the system that keeps the numbers moving even on the days you don't feel like it. Automated. Hard to accidentally stop. Contributions so routine they stop feeling like sacrifice and start feeling like something you just do, like breathing. You set it up once, you protect it, you nudge it up whenever you can. It's not elegant, it just works. Level 7. The reframe. Here's what I need you to actually hear before we close, not as a comforting platitude, but as something true. 35 with 0 is not a disqualification. Sit with that for a second, because the shame will try to argue with it. The people who track this for a living have shown over and over that people who start seriously in their mid to late 30s can and do reach real security by staying consistent and being smart about it. The math is harder than it would have been. The runway is shorter, but the door's not closed. It is genuinely, verifiably not closed. And there's something else you have now, something that never shows up in any compound interest chart. You know something a 25-year-old doesn't. You know exactly what it costs to not start, not as a theory, in your body. In the closed app, the face-down phone, the 2 a.m. quiet, you know the weight of that 0 in a way that someone who's never carried it simply can't. And that hard-won knowledge is the very thing that will keep you going when the new plan stops feeling exciting and the contribution feels inconvenient and the future feels too far away to justify the present. The 25-year-old with an account they barely check doesn't have that. You do. You are 35. If you're in decent health, you may have half a century of life still ahead of you, and around 30 years before standard retirement age. 30 years in which the math, as tough as it is, still bends in your favor. If you begin now. Not with a perfect plan, not with a big number, with something. Small, consistent, automated, and protected the way you protect anything that actually matters to you. Because the shame was always attached to the silence. And you just broke the silence. You looked at the number. You sat with it. You didn't look away this time. That matters more than you know, because the only real difference between the person who turns this around at 35 and the person who hits 40 carrying the exact same problem was never intelligence, or income, or luck. It was the willingness to stop putting the phone face down. The 0 is not what you are. It's just where you were standing on the day you finally decided to stop looking away. So write today's date down somewhere, because someday, maybe sooner than you think, you're going to want to remember the exact day the number started to move. Quick reminder that I'm not a financial advisor, and this isn't financial advice, just a straight human look at a situation that a whole lot of good people quietly find themselves in. If this reached you at the right moment, a like and a share genuinely help it reach the next person, and I'd honestly love to hear in the comments if today's the day you decided to start. I'll see you in the next one.